Here we are again. Welcome to Hired the Podcast. I'm Travis Miller, and I'm excited today. We've got in studio here with me three of the newest members of the Miller Resource Group team, Kacie, Chitwood, Dakota Montavon, and Johnathan Freeman. Guys, the reason I'm looking forward to talking to you today is you're all new employees here. And it means you all recently went through job search. And market's still wild. It looks like September wildly outdid expectations, and the number of openings still remains incredibly high. And there's all these waves and things happening in the market, and to talk to three of you who have recently been in that market and to hear from you directly, what's it like out there searching for a job right now?
I suppose we can go least to most recent here, or vice versa. Yeah. How about we start with you, Kacie?
Well, I think it's been a while since I looked for a job, so it was definitely a whole new landscape for me. I found the tools available today to allow me to be much more effective and reach out to a lot more people than I really would have ever been able to do.
When was the last time you looked for a job before this?
Oh, I don't really know if I can count that far back. 2012.
Okay, so what's different? What's changed in the last 10 years? What are the tools that have
I don't think LinkedIn, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall that being something I even had access to. So it was certainly a lot more reaching out to people you knew specifically and, using the same type of strategy, but on a much more, concentric.
Smaller
scale, yeah, certainly. It was really neat to be able to have that much bandwidth. I guess maybe that's not the right word, but I found it really fascinating, to be honest, and certainly it's become quite relevant in this role. But it was different.
More options to apply to, more companies, you felt that helped you in your job search to have more accessibility to more people in more positions.
It did.
What about for you, Dakota? It had to be kind of challenging because you're coming from a wildly different industry, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But what was the search process like for you and someone who didn't search for a job 12 years ago?
Yeah, so before MRG, MRG was the first job I really applied to career-wise, aside from my dance background. And the dance background was very much, you show up at an audition, you demonstrate your skill. Obviously, there's some typecasting associated with that as well, but it's a little different.
Frankly, that doesn't sound much different than a normal job search.
No, it doesn't. I guess not. More what I was used to, I guess you could say. When it came to a traditional job search for me, my parents were saying, here's your resume, walk into that establishment, give them the resume, say you want a job, right? Mm-hmm. It's a little different. But for this one, just really leaning on my support networks, teachers. LinkedIn was a big one, like Kacie was mentioning. Didn't have that when I had graduated, even from high school, and it was just starting to bubble up when I was thinking about going back to school.
And John, you're a little different because we reached out to you directly. And I can't remember, were you in the process of searching for new positions, or did we just happen to get lucky with timing?
It's an interesting spot, and I guess to kind of reflect on what you said, because I was leaving college when I did my first ever internship and or job search. Freshman year, walking the job fair floor, junior year, walking the job fair floor. I had several internship offers heading into junior year, which I was very excited about, interfacing with as many companies as I could in person and on LinkedIn. And IU had a good program for getting people ready to network effectively. But that was 2019 into 2020, my senior year. So a lot of those opportunities from either non-essential businesses or ones that hit the panic button were up in smoke immediately. Mm-hmm. So leaving school, I was blessed enough to jump on with Sherwin-Williams and join on. I had interned with them junior year, 2019, and then 2020, essential industry, paint never stopped pumping. So I had to get in with them and work in the store. So, at the time I was passively fielding some opportunities when I was doing outside sales for them. And Gary's message happened to hit my inbox at just the right moment, somewhere between breakfast and start of day, where I caught it sideways. And I know we'd made mention of it, but a couple of grammatical errors in the LinkedIn message made me know that it was personally to me. It wasn't some pre-automated message. It was there, it was real, it was raw, and it was intriguing. So I got the call, and it seemed like a great choice.
Were you searching for positions at all at that same time?
I had looked a little bit, and honestly, it was scary. It just kind of looking at that market at the time, the positions were so all over the place. And if it was entry level in a sales field that said 3 to 5 years of sales experience, were they going to hear that I had retail sales experience and say that fit? Were they going to hear that I was only outside on the road for 1 year and shoot me down for that? Or was that good? I never even got up the courage to send in a resume and find out, because I kind of self-disqualified from most of them. So I just kind of let things come to me. I wasn't unhappy, but...
So knowing what you know now, after having gone through that process and after a couple of months to almost a year in recruiting, would you have done differently? Or let me ask that a different way. What would you say to people that are just starting their search for a new position? What should they be doing to find their ideal company and land the ideal role with organizations they can get excited about?
Oh, maybe it's selfish on my part, but call a recruiter. Baseline, the number of compensation reports, the number of job descriptions, the number of resumes a recruiter sees, they're going to be able to give you advice and set you apart. And that's several aspects of your job search that they can give you an edge in. They can let you know if you're being compensated fairly, what the tendencies in the marketplace are looking like, what industries are strong and not. The second, really just having a refined attitude about your search. There are so many platforms online, be it LinkedIn or something else, where a couple hours of research and time, and then touching base with a few employees of those teams you're interested in, can just give you such a leg up on other people's just kind of fire and forget resume submittal method. There's just so many ways, and I can lean on y'all too for that.
Well, I get that, but I think it's important for people to have multiple avenues. And this is a difficult thing, because I was having this conversation. It's a conversation that started this morning and trickled over into lunch. And what is a recruiter's job? So we were talking to a senior person in our company earlier today who said, a company gives me a search and they say, I need you to find me someone that has these 5 traits or experiences. These are the must-haves for our job. And then here are 5 to 10 other nice-to-haves. And I'm reaching out to candidates. If they don't have those must-have, all 5 of those must-have things, I know that this conversation is pretty much done. Not that they're going to immediately hang up the phone, but that they know this person isn't going to be a fit for this job that they're working on. And as recruiters, we are hired by companies to help find people with very specific skills and very specific traits. I think a lot of really great recruiters will be able to say, okay, they have 3 of the 5 must-have experiences, and they've got 3 to 4 of the nice-to-haves, and they've got all this other stuff that we didn't even think about. And so I'm going to try and understand the story about why I think this person could be a great fit for the job. But if you look at the 3 of your backgrounds, and you take the role with Miller Resource Group as an account executive, executive recruiter, executive search consultant, whatever phrase you want to use for this job, a lot of companies would say, I need 3 to 5 years of experience in recruiting, working in these specific industries, certain amount of years in sales, new business development, cold calling, experience working with CRMs and ATSs, track record of success, a well-established LinkedIn presence. none of you would have checked all the boxes. And so, back to your point, John, reach out to a recruiter. I say yes, reach out to multiple recruiters, because not every recruiter has relationships with every company. Also, reach out through the traditional path. But I guess my question now is, what can a person do to sell their value to a recruiter so that that recruiter can say, you might not have all 5 of the must-haves for the positions that I'm working on, but I can see how you can bring more than just the value for someone that has those 5 must-haves.
I've got one distillation before I'd pass the baton on this one, but it's something I talked about with a candidate just the other day, and it's tell me your fit, then tell me your grit.
Okay.
Or grit versus fit. On the fit side of things, what's your raw experience on paper? Translate your resume to me in a way that makes sense. You have this many years with this technology. You have a passion for X, Y, and Z. You've sold this, you've fixed this, you've had hands-on with this equipment. That's fit. Grit is that other side of things. That is their personality, their determination to be successful, maybe a couple of motivators. There was that guy that I talked to month 2, and I was just calling him, just generally, there were a few roles I thought he'd be a fit for, and that was the guy. I made a post about him a while back because he said, John, I've already got my lake house. What I need is a good team, and this is what I'm willing to do it. I think if you can make a narrative that combines the fit and the grit aspect of it, and what a recruiter's very talented at doing is translating that to a company. But if you're able to refine your narrative, your elevator pitch, to cover both your fit and your grit for roles, it's going to help you stand apart when you're talking about any opportunity and sell your own value to that company. But, happy to hear what you guys think on that point as well.
I think I would touch on the value. I think knowing your value and understanding really how to tell your story in a way that does emphasize the objective and the subjective experience. I love the word grit, and I will say that it means something different to me, which is that it's an acronym, and it stands for guts, resolution, intelligence, tenacity, and then add an S for spirit. And all of those things are things that are really difficult to communicate in a quantitative way. So I love the way that you put that, because that's really what a recruiter will see and or not see very quickly, I think, if after time and the ability to discern in terms of the role they're trying to fill.
No, I mean, just to kind of add a little bit to that, I think from my own personal perspective, I didn't one-to-one match up with the job description, especially here from Miller Resource. Really for any sales position, having that 3 to 5 year experience or the background, but we're all selling in one way, shape, or form, and sat down, looked at that job description, and really broke it down with people, like John or my teacher and mentors, and sat down and had to really clearly communicate the value that I had. Well, have you focused in on key accounts and decision makers? Off the top of my head in the dance career, I was like, no, I don't think so. And then we're like, okay, well, walk me through what you do on a day-to-day basis, right? Okay, well, I'm teaching dance classes, and that can go from, as young as 4-year-olds to as old as, in their 20s, like pre-professionals. Okay, well, now break that down. What did you have to do to get them to come to class? Okay, well, I had to market my service. I had to build those relationships. I had to walk into these dance studios and knock on doors and seek out opportunities and find out who is the one that had the power to make the decision, right? And so then my teacher was like, Adoy, you have been doing this. You've been doing this for years. And then it really took somebody from the outside to kind of jog my memory and say, oh, I have been doing something similar to this. I'm selling myself short. I need to redefine my story. I need to discover what values I can bring to this and what's hidden underneath kind of something that I'm taking for granted or surface level for me. that could apply to this new role.
Is that something that's been challenging as you're starting out, is being able to dig below the surface and find the experiences that are comps, equivalents, matches for what somebody says they need versus what somebody is capable of?
Yeah, there's a portion of that where you have to find out where somebody would be a stretch and where somebody wouldn't, and I'd say that is a muscle. And you also kind of have to see sometimes through if somebody's really selling themselves on the role but might not have that experience. So there's sometimes a few different elements to it. But I think the real key is pulling out their confidence in, like what Dakota said, well, walk me through a week in the life right now or one of your work days. And if they are saying, I don't know how comfortable I'd be with this, you can get to the reason for it. Or more importantly, if they're motivated to do it, but they don't feel they have the experience, trying to help them walk back through that and point it out, I'd say is a skill. Mm-hmm. That's something that you gain, learn, and refine over time. Even just a fellow that was coming out of high school, on my side of things, he heard I was a recruiter. He reached out. I helped him out with his resume a bit. And he didn't have a formal job. He worked on his family farm. And that's all he ever did. And he wants to get into a specialty agricultural program in college. And he said, well, I could just put I worked on the farm on there. Maybe they'll understand it. Well, no, what did you do? And what do you want to do? Mm-hmm. What did you do? Let's refine that to the things that you were most focused on, engaged with, and can spin a good narrative out of. Well, it turned out he loved building the agricultural enclosures. So he'd wire up chicken coops that needed to be within 3 degrees Fahrenheit of accuracy or they'd lose the stock. He needed to make sure the lighting was just right at different times of day for the cattle. He needed to make sure that the food bins were secure enough that the pests couldn't get in them. He did all these things, and we finally walked it and phrased it in such a way that suddenly he had keywords that were in line with the programs he was applying for. Important key skills he was refining and developing, much like the professionals did in your life. If you can glean some of that out and then draw parallels between what you're doing now to what you really want to do and where your ramp is already being built to it, that's where that translation comes through. And again, it's tricky. Nothing easy about it.
It is. Complaints I hear often about recruiters is, well, we brought this firm on and they sent us a bunch of resumes and none of them matched what we were looking for. And I got to ask, do you think that is primarily people who are lazy and they get a resume and they just send it over hoping? Or is it they have done some of this base work and they see the potential, they've just done a bad job of articulating it, a bad job of selling it?
It could be either, and it's hard to know, really.
Because I understand the complaint. If you hired a recruiter to help you find a very specific person with a very specific experience and they're sending you dozens of resumes and none of them are matching, it'd frustrate the hell out of me too. Mm-hmm. But I also don't think that, I think there's a value missed if all a recruiter does is match resumes to job descriptions.
I've gotten in the habit of asking if we're playing darts or we're playing pool.
Continue the metaphor.
Of course. Game of darts, you got 3 shots you're throwing at the board. And if it's a week where I'm focused on finding somebody talent, I can try and hit the bullseye for you and make sure that those 3 darts are placed as well as possible. Or at the start of the week, I can fire that cue ball into a stack of talent and see what goes in the hole. And I could scatter these resumes all over the board in front of you and say low experience, high culture fit, high experience, low culture fit, somewhere in the sweet spot and everything in between, and then refine it backwards from there. But I think the key is, just as any process would be, is communication on both sides. Mm-hmm. The time we spend before launching a search, oftentimes if it's urgent, we could spend 20 hours with an individual talking with them about what this perfect candidate looks like and still not know until it's sitting in front of them. There's going to be things we miss and gloss over. Nevertheless, sometimes it's much less time than that we're spending talking about an individual. But that live feedback, that we got somebody in front of you and give me a couple of things, even if it's a no, give me a couple things that are on the right track and a couple things that are on the wrong track and help me refine it inward. That responsibility falls on both sides to get that feedback. I could stay quiet and say, all right, perfect, we'll get you 3 more. The second they say no. Or I could say, well, help me understand here. This was my impression. Or this was off the jump what I saw lining up. What am I missing? In the same way, they can call that out for me. I'd prefer they do. You know, in our initial chat, we said this and this. I think you did miss out on this portion of the skill set. I want to make sure and reconfirm how important this is to us. Perfect. Step forward. So that's where darts versus pool comes in, really, and how we're imaging this coming in. Out of the 5 must-haves, if I find somebody with 3, do you still want them at your doorstep? Or do you only want maybe 1 a week or a couple a week, and then they are perfectly in line?
That's a great point.
What if they say no? What if they say, no, this is dire to our situation, that they must have these 5 skills or experiences, and if they don't bother?
Well, that's where I'd hope they have a time set to interview this candidate. Because if I'm sending an email that has that talent profile in it, that has their list of reasons and the 5 yeses are checked, I'm giving them a phone call too. Because this is talent that's going to be gone next week. If they fit that closely to their industry, one of their competitors is going to pick them up. No doubt. The second they even hear my opportunity, even if they weren't thinking about changing before that, they are now. They heard something out there that was exciting and that they were willing to put their information in front of. The clock is now ticking. It's the way of the market.
So Jen, you talked about it a little bit with your farm buddy, but what can a person be doing as they're starting their job search, or even before it begins, to ensure that they're being targeted by recruiters and talent acquisition teams for positions that they would be a good fit for?
Well, funny enough, it was the same thing I was talking with Dakota's class about when he'd first heard of MRG, was when I was a guest speaker, because I showed them LinkedIn from a recruiter side. I show them what LinkedIn Recruiters interface looks like and where we are able to discern their skill sets based on keywords. And keywords is a buzzword you hear thrown around a ton in the internet era. Nobody even really knows what it means. You'll hear keywords, subtext, this and that, web crawlers. What it all boils down to is if you want to get noticed by people in your space, you need to have words and skills in your profiles, in your resume, relevant to people in your space. Plain and simple, trying to put as many industry and career-specific skill sets, experiences, stories, anecdotes, posts, experience, like any of that in a LinkedIn profile, in a resume that are directly in line with what you want to do is the best way to build a bridge. If I have in my profile that I'm looking for somebody that has manufactured widgets for 5 years, and they have a post about widgets is their most recent post, and in their subheadline underneath their name and title, it says, "I'm the widget guy." I'm going to call them up, and the first thing out of my mouth is, "Hey, this is John Freeman with Miller Resource Group. I hear you're the widget guy." It's as simple as that. Put out into the field what you want to get back in. Show people what you want to do, and they're going to see it, and they're going to reciprocate.
So would you say the same is true for a resume as well as a LinkedIn profile? Don't write it for what you've done, write it for what you want to do.
I would.
Yeah, doubly important for a resume, and was another brief video that I touched on was customizing your resume versus having a standardized template. I think it's great to have a standardized template, but if you're serious about a job, that header should feature that company, the title of the position, and a couple direct skills that then get described in your experiences below. Anything you can pull. I don't care if you were working a deep fryer in a back kitchen. There is going to be something relevant you did in that job to what you are trying to do. if you were interfacing with difficult customers, if you worked on a team of professionals and got promoted due to your merit and hard work ethic, that's what you should be talking about if that's what you want to do in this next job. Hands down, full stop. You have to find those and put those up at the front. Because the amount of time, you and me both know the amount of time somebody spends reading a resume. Mm-hmm. If they don't see what they want to see at the top, start, front, right, center, it's done.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that it's better to apply to 10 positions that you know are positions you would want and that you could be qualified for, and to tailor your resume and or application for this position, or to send out 100 of the same resume and application to 100 different positions?
Well, if you're really looking, I'd say both. But if you're really looking for something you love and want to do, chances are there aren't going to be 100 that are perfectly in line with that. So if you do a really well-researched 10 and a very focused effort chasing down those 10, there's a good chance you're going to hear back from at least a couple of them.
What do you mean chasing down?
Chasing down, the extra effort, the above and beyond. That is, I'm connecting with one of their sales reps on LinkedIn because I want to be a sales rep for their company. I'm not just connecting with one, I'm shooting a connection to about 10 of their sales reps with the hope that one talks to me and I say, hey, this is going to sound out of left field. I'm applying to be a sales rep at your company. I was curious if you could share a bit on your experience with me. It's this awesome thing. People love talking about themselves. If you get a one on the phone, he'll tell you morning, noon, and night a completely unbiased opinion on the job, and you'll immediately know if you're a fit for it. And then, would you mind introducing me to your boss? Would you mind introducing me to this individual that on LinkedIn it says is hiring for this position? It always ties an individual to that posting, the person who put it up. Yeah. Do you know Brock? Can you get me on the line with Brock? I really want to get in front of him. I'm excited about what you do. That's a warm introduction. Your resume doesn't get lost in the pile, but I'd love both of your opinions on the 10 versus 100 there, though.
No, I mean, as far as curating your resume, that was what I was doing when I was on the job market. I had a standard template, but depending on the job, I was identifying the keywords that needed to be in there. I was looking back on my experiences and filling in what I thought would be marketable and valuable to that company, right? And then to kind of piggyback off of what John was saying, identify those companies that you're going to align with and that you see yourself with kind of long term. You know what I mean? As far as something that you're going to enjoy doing, something that you love, it's got to be a good cultural fit. You got to mesh with the people there as well. So those were the types of jobs I was seeking, because for me, I know that I need that support from a culture. I don't want to necessarily feel bogged down when I go to work. I want to feel like I'm growing and I'm pursuing something that has meaning and that, I think anybody does, but you got to figure that out for yourself. And if you can identify those companies that you align with personally and where you're at in your situation in life, and you tailor that resume to go toward that company, you're going to set yourself up for success and ultimately the more sustainable outcomes as far as work-life balance and things that you enjoy. And yeah.
Living proof. You landed the job because of a custom approach. It's tried and true.
True. I think also if you have a little bit more experience, it's not a bad idea to take a minute to figure out, obviously, who else is out there working in certain fields or in roles that you find attractive. You do it a couple different ways. I know I found myself actually looking at people I hadn't worked with in a long time, but sort of seeing where some of their early experience that I shared with them led. And I was pretty open to taking my skill set into a few different, opportunities and some really different industries. Recruiting felt really natural based on some of my previous roles. But I did also use some of those people's LinkedIn profiles as kind of models to sort of help me get a sense of how I wanted to present myself, obviously with still my skills and my own experience. But sometimes I think in uncertainty, it's not a bad idea to mimic or to look at a model or a pilot and then see how you can make it your own.
This is something we were talking a little bit about earlier, Kacie, but I think people could benefit a lot from is if you've never used LinkedIn before, or you're new to it, or you built a profile 5 years ago and it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
What should somebody be doing to gain eyeballs and to really utilize that as a tool?
Well, I think you start with what you don't know. And I guess you and I had a pretty, in-depth conversation about all of the things I still feel as if I want to learn or that I want to better understand. I think it's a really good idea to probably connect with someone who's more versed. I mean, I've learned so much from John in the short period of time I've known him about LinkedIn as a tool, and certainly from our training here at MRG. I think be curious, ask, who can be a resource for you. My own kids and my husband were also great resources for me.
How are they a good resource for you?
I think keywords, I know that's it's easy to use that term, but I did have, several people look at my resume. I did reach out to some recruiters myself and ensure that they felt as if I was in the right lane in terms of the jobs I was seeking and how I was representing myself. But I got a lot of great suggestions from my daughter, who's a business student and a senior in college, and she's just so much more versed and I'm confident about how to use this type of technology to put her own story out there. So I followed a lot of the advice she gave me.
As a new recruiter, what's something you wish you knew before you started that you've learned since you have started?
Do you want the laundry list or the short
Yeah,
version?
right.
Give me the most important one.
The most important
I think
one.
just remembering you're going to fail way more times than you're going to succeed at the beginning. And not that you don't know that, but just to continue to remind yourself that this is how we learn. We never learn anything by doing it right the first time. We maybe got lucky, but if we really want to get good at something, we have to learn by making mistakes.
Yeah, there's so many. Let me marinate on this. Let me marinate on this.
Oh,
Nothing makes for riveting podcasts like marination.
Yeah,
Marination. Okay,
yes, I can cover for a minute here. I think when I was brand new, I had a mentality about recruiters. And sometimes when you're stepping onto a new stage, you think, well, what am I going to do to be the best recruiter? And you start going, well, what do recruiters do? Recruiters are confident, and they sell you on the job, and they tell you all the details. And I love details. I love a full description. Maybe I'll give people a full description, and then, I'd really love to know this, this, and this. There is no I in recruiting. There is. But there's no I in recruiting. The conversation has to revolve around, what do you need to hear from me for an opportunity to be of interest? What details do you need from me here and now? It's not just, these are the 5 things my client finds most important. What are the 5 things that the other side finds most important? Mm-hmm. What are their 5 must-haves? I'm talking to a human being, sometimes on their lunch hour in their workday, that slipped into their car just for a minute to chat with me because, who wouldn't like to talk with me? Just kidding. They were intrigued by a message. They saw something that gave them hope, that said, there might be something cool out there on the horizon. Maybe I'll hear them out. If doggy daycare is something that is an absolute must for you, and the client I'm recruiting for does not have doggy daycare, I'm going to tell you that. And I might as well get you out of that at the start, get that out of you at the start of the process. So when you have the job offer in hand, that isn't the thing that suddenly hits the table. Where's the doggy daycare? I was under the presumption there was a doggy daycare here. So it's just as important to refine the human element of it and find out, well, I'm not talking to 1,000 me's out there in the field that need to know everything I'd want to know about a job. I'm talking to some people that just need to know 1 or 2 things. I'm talking to some veterans that love their job. They see a posting and they can refine and understand exactly what that role is going to be and what it's going to look like and how they're going to position and sell themselves for it. They've been there, done that. They need these couple of things that are going poorly in their current spot to be better, and that would improve their life threefold. They're at work more than they see their family and kids. Mm-hmm. What's going to make it better? What's going to make this a true marriage between talent and client, that every day they see this guy come into work, they're going to go, this was the best hire we ever made. And when we make another one, I'm going to call John again. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Dakota, if somebody's thinking about going into the recruiting industry, which we know every kid dreams of, nobody thinks about going into recruiting. There's so few people that are in recruiting, went to school for it, thought of it as a career before they ended up in it. Mm-hmm. So to somebody that's considering, or maybe somebody that's not considering recruiting, what is it about this business that they should consider? What's something about it that makes it a great profession?
Something about this, I believe, that makes it a great profession. Someone who didn't dream about being a recruiter growing up, someone who didn't know I was going to fall into this, is just, you have an opportunity to continue pursuing growth and learning, to continue reinventing yourself, to continue building relationships in your network. I'd say, it's got so many different nuanced facets and elements to it that it always leaves you guessing. You're never starved for, there's never a dull day, I should say. And so if you're looking for a fun environment where your coworkers, they've got stories galore, we all do, and Atch said it best, where the highs are high, the lows are low, and that's just the journey, and you're along for the ride, and you're present and willing to put in the work and help your people around you. That's really what I would say you could look forward to, is just a roller coaster, but an enjoyable ride nonetheless.
Coming from the sales background, a food service background, a few other things in my short period of time in the professional world here, this job is a playground for the curious.
Yeah.
The number of people and backgrounds and walks of life and industries you get to talk to every day. If you're curious by nature and you hop on the line with somebody that's willing to tell you about what they do, this is somebody whose wife or husband is probably very tired of hearing it. Mm-hmm. And you get them on the right day, they'll tell you some of the coolest things that are happening behind the scenes. In our case, in the automation world, this robot that can lift up to 18,000 pounds, we're it's confidential, don't tell anybody, we're doing this cool thing. This camera that shoots up to 53,000 frames per second, and it's going to be pointed at the pharmaceuticals you see on the shelf every single day to make sure there isn't a single defect and that these capsules release at the right pace. And then you turn around and this company's making vats that are going to channel 12,000 gallons of wine per day through this thing. And you can just get so lost in how cool all of it is. And, you're calling never the same person. Every day you got so many different people and stories. I think that's what's so riveting about it, and that's what's going to make it a several-decade career for me. It's so awesome. I'm going to wake up tomorrow excited about something completely different, something new to add to the pile.
People spend so much of their life working, and to know that you're helping make that as optimal as possible, for me, from a big picture perspective, is really a draw. Mm-hmm. What we do for our work it's something we will lean into throughout the course of our lives, and gosh, you hope it's something that fulfills you. That's really the good news for me, is when I know I'm helping someone.
Well, thanks everyone. Leave it on a good note. That was fantastic. If people are interested in reaching out to you, John, Dakota, Kacie, what do you specialize in, and how can they get a hold of you?
Most certainly. I guess I'll go first there. I specialize in machine vision and industrial automation applications. I practically live on LinkedIn as a recruiter, so easiest to shoot me a quick connect or a ping there. But otherwise, you'll catch my email and my cell on there as well. But happy to hear from either talent or industry professional that might be looking for said talent, because there's a good chance I'm calling somebody that you might want to talk to.
Well said.
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, Dakota Montavon. Specialize in automated material handling, more so focused on robotic integrations on end of line, so palletizers, depalletizers, case sortation, things of that nature. Yeah, I'd love to help support you and your business, and if you're a candidate out there, a young professional, love to help support you in finding your next career adventure.
Thank you. I really am enjoying leaning into ag tech and industrial automation as a whole, the area that I am enjoying gaining knowledge of, and I really hope to help more people in as robotics and systems integrators, people who are providing total system solutions. I really enjoy working with salespeople, but I've really gained a fondness for working with engineers and helping them find a place for their unique skill set to be applied where they can grow and continue to gain knowledge technically. So Kacie, Chitwood, also on LinkedIn.
Kacie, Chitwood, Dakota Montavon, John Freeman. Thank you so much, and a big
Travis.
thank you to our producer, Noah Cuff.
Thanks, Noah.
This has been Hired the Podcast. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Noah.